Good morning. Being Lamar. Thank you for the welcome. Thank you, Michael, for setting things up, and most of all, thank you all for coming along to this session. I would like just to echo what Michael was just saying there about the importance that you have in what we have to deliver, what the CIMA qualification has to deliver. And if I give you just a very, very small bit of background about myself, you'll appreciate that this is not just empty flattery that I'm giving you. And I think it was the 23rd of June 1990, I did my first ever teaching, and it was CIMA teaching. So 24 years ago I started as a CIMA lecturer, and a lot of you started as CIMA lecturers only not even 24 months ago. It was very, very close that you did it, and I developed a real passion for the teaching, and there was a lot. I taught other accounting qualifications as well as CIMA, so you know, there's the side of being a lecturer and helping young people to develop skills and prepare for exams that you know will get them on a career plan and start to develop. And you know, I don't keep in touch with all the students that I taught from that time ago, and cumulatively over those years there's quite a few thousand who have actually, despite my best efforts, they've made it through the exams, the qualified accountants, and one or two that I know of are you know, working in very, very senior positions in global organisations. So when we say that we are helping people's careers to develop, you know, I know for a fact it's a very, very real thing that we're doing. And my background, when I did my accountancy training, it wasn't actually within CIMA, it was within a chartered accountancy body. I was working for one of the audit firms. And I really didn't enjoy it, being in an audit firm. I didn't enjoy the audit, I didn't enjoy the way that the work was done, and didn't feel that I was adding a lot to the businesses that I was working with. And my eyes became open about CIMA really in 1990 when I started speaking to the students, a lot of whom were in junior positions in large organisations that we'd all heard of, British Airways, the Ford Motor Company, and so on, all the banks, etc. And I learned that what they were doing to help their businesses was exciting. It took a great type of intelligence for them to do what they were doing, where I felt that my previous job as an auditor was very much just following the numbers and nothing creative, nothing imaginative about it. So I very quickly switched my allegiance and my attention towards management, accounting, financial management, and of course CIMA is, in my view, the home of all of that. So that's where my history with CIMA started, all that time back then. My first ever CIMA conference, oh, that's what's happened, it's gone to sleep. My first ever CIMA conference was in 1993. So again, it was 20-something years ago that I was sitting where you are, trying to find out about what was happening to the syllabus change that went on there. And like you're doing, you want to find out, so I wanted to find out how I could get as much of an edge that would help my students when I went back to work. And by that time, I was starting to manage the CIMA course program at the college I was working at. So I had a team, and I wanted everyone to have the very latest information, to speak to people at CIMA, to speak to the examiners that we had at the time, and get that much information. So, you know, I had that passion back then, and I hope that what you're starting to feel as you're in front of students and you're engaging with my colleagues and learning more about CIMA. And you know, I know that, and I'm not trying to be boastful, but I know that the work that I did back then and for the following 20 years made an enormous difference to people. And I know that, and I've had people that have come up to me, you know, sort of after 20 years. Actually, there's somebody who lives about 2 or 3 streets away from me that I used to see around the shops, and I thought I know him from somewhere. And one time we were on a bus together, and he came up and said, "Peter Stewart, isn't it?" And I went, "Yes." And I was wondering whether it was somebody that I knew from my children's school or from the church or from whatever. And he said, "You taught me management accounting." And then I recognised him, and he'd had the kind of hair transformation that Venkat has had since I knew him. He was when I taught him, he must have been 22, 23. He was now 42, 43. He'd gone grey and slightly see-through hair. But he remembered me because I taught him, and people will remember you when you teach them, when you help them to achieve success. So it's something that you know, I know, because I've sat there doing what you're doing, I know that CIMA can't be successful without you helping all our students to get through the exams. And that's why it's so valuable to me that you've decided to come along and find out what you can do. I've got a presentation that I'll go through. I do hope that it stimulates your thinking, but I'm also aware that there may be questions that you would like to ask about what we've done, about what we're going to be doing, because we are going through a period of quite significant change. So please don't be shy, please don't hesitate to put your hand up if there's something I'm talking about and you want to ask for more information on that. In the recent round of doing these lecturers' conferences, I've met people who I used to sit there with. And our very big launch that we did in February in London, one chap sat beside me, and I didn't remember that I'd been with him in 1993 at my first ever CIMA conference. And just before I went up to speak on a stage to about 200 people, he said, "Good luck. I remember what you used to do when people were talking on the stage." And I used to sit there in the very front row, because I always thought it's nice to be close and friendly to the tutor, but I would ask questions. And maybe because I've got a Scottish accent, I might sound more aggressive than people might have expected. So this chap, just before I went up to speak, he said, "You used to," and the phrase he used was monster. "You used to monster those examiners." And I said, I didn't, I just asked them questions. But so I figure after 20 years of sitting there, giving it to people that are up here, giving them a hard time and making sure they are accountable and they answer questions, I think it's only fair that there's a bit of payback. And if you want to ask me tough questions, ask me tough questions, because I've asked them from your seat before. So anyway, let me go on with what we're going to do. Really, the story that Michael was saying there was about making people competent and confident. The other thing is relevant. And the competency framework, which you mentioned, I'm just going to put the picture up in a moment, is all about understanding what business is about. So you know that the changes that we are making to our syllabus are because we have spoken to hundreds of individuals who are working in business, who are running businesses. Small businesses, large businesses, national, global businesses. Yeah? Organisations that are for-profit, organisations not for-profit, organisations in the service sector, in the manufacturing sector. We've got a huge amount of breadth of research into, and the simple question is, what do you need your management accountant to do? And they've come out through all this research with the competency framework that Michael just talked about, saying these 4 skills that we need people to develop. So CIMA's listened to that and created the competency framework. And from the competency framework, we've produced a professional qualification syllabus. We've produced, or we're about to produce, the practical experience requirements, which people will have to fulfill to get CIMA membership and move on to get the CGMA designation. Our professional development, post-qualification professional development, is going to be driven by the competency framework, because this reflects the skills people need in business, yeah, and it keeps our people, CIMA people, employable. And it allows them, through professional development, to keep on enhancing their skills and enhancing their employability. So this is our, this is fundamental now to everything that is done by CIMA, and say when it comes to professional development and so on, with the CGMA designation. So I'll talk about how this is reflected within in the syllabus. I know that you spend a lot of time with certificate level, and to give you a little bit of a heads up, the certificate qualification will be undergoing a review. The first conversations about it have already taken place, and again, the fundamental thing behind it is, what would an employer expect within the competency framework of somebody at certificate level to be doing? So we hope to be back with you again over the next year, talking about and finding out what's happening with the certificate level. I think that's one that the next generation of certificate exams will come in late 2016. Right? So in 2 years' time from now. Okay, so that's fundamental to what we're doing. You know, or you've seen the professional qualification syllabus by now. I hope that you've had a look at this. And in many ways, the fact that Myanmar's a new market, really just finding its way into CIMA, makes this easy. But in our, sort of the markets like the UK, where we've been doing things for 24 and 30 and 40 years, a lot of people are looking at this and saying, so what? Because for a long time now, we've had 3 levels in the professional qualification. When I started teaching, back in 1990, we had a qualification that was 4 stages. One of those is now the certificate, and then we had stage 2, 3, 4. So we had 1, 2, 3 levels in there. So this doesn't really excite people just when they see the picture. And likewise, the 3 pillars that are in there, I think they've been around within CIMA for 10 years. So again, people are just saying, you've changed the colours. Because it used to be, I can't even remember, green, pink and, what was the third colour? Blue? Yellow? I can't remember. I've already put it behind me. So it doesn't look different, right? But it is fundamentally different to not just the CIMA 2010 syllabus, which it replaces, but to all other accounting qualifications. I'll talk about a change to a syllabus and say that if I were to put up the previous picture and say what's the change between one and the other, we've still got 9 subjects. Same as we had, we've still got the three levels, the 3 pillars. So cosmetically, very little has changed. But in all this research and talking about competencies, and the one thing that CIMA's done that no other professional accounting body that I'm aware of, none of the big global bodies has done, is to say, well, hang on, why do we have a level 2, a level 3 and a level 4. What do they mean? What do they mean in the world of business, in the world of employment? Yeah? Because all the other syllabus changes, not just CIMA, I used to also run ACCA programs, AAT, I worked on chartered accountancy programs. The levels really just meant that you were going to do the same as before, but a little bit harder. So you might have basic double entry preparation of financial statements for a sole trader or for a small private business. Now you're going to be dealing with listed companies, Fortune 500 companies and groups of companies. So it's the same but harder, right? We've moved away from that. We've moved to career levels. What happens in the operational level is all within a level of employment and seniority within a business. So we're going to talk about integration of subjects to say that the person who is competent and confident at the operational level is capable of doing a job which we've got a general definition for. And it's a definition that has been discussed and developed in conjunction with these major employers, major and smaller employers. So each of these could be converted into a job description, yeah? As opposed, as I say, to the other bodies and ourselves previously of having something that has been developed by academics, people in universities who look at levels of verb and levels of difficulty in the terminology that is used. Right? So that's something that isn't evident just in the pictures. And it's something that you need to appreciate so that you can understand when you're putting together a program at operational level that it's not just let's do one subject, then another, then another. You've got these very important, nowhere near big enough in the diagram, right? Because it just looks like it looks like it's just a line separating the boxes. But that's what happens when you bring marketing people into it. This should be a huge big box. It should surround everything and say, yeah, we are going to put all these skills together in one exam, in the case study exam. So we're learning skills bit by bit, knowing that we're going to come back and apply them in a business context later. All right? And why are we doing that? And this is, for you to communicate to students and also to work with your colleagues on. Yeah, you might be a P1 specialist, a management accounting specialist. At some point you'll have to have a conversation with a person in F1. Because some of the topics that you're teaching, making decisions on where you're spending your money, will have an impact on what you report in the financial statements and how you manage your cash flows. Yeah? How it all fits into the business plan. So, with you understanding the purpose of what we've done, as I said, is pretty vital when it comes to thinking about delivering the courses. And, of course, to keep the students motivated. Yeah? It's all great to be able to stand and talk and explain everything you know about all the topics in a syllabus and get students to learn it and see that they understand it. But at some point, a student will have been working on this subject for a few days, a few weeks, and they'll think, oh, what's it all for? And of course you say, well, you get an exam, you get better noticed, and you become more employable, but the reason is you're working towards this, and this is a clear employability statement, if you like. Right, so we've got meaning behind each of our levels. The phrase I've already used is an integrated level, And we've defined the skills level by level. So I'll talk just about the operational level to show you what has happened. So the pie chart here, I'm not sure if we keep on calling it a donut, because I don't think we can call it a pie when it's got a big hole in the middle. So these are the competency donuts. It's a very unofficial term. You won't see it in any CIMA literature. But whenever somebody talks about the donuts, we all know what they're saying. So this is the competency framework. And we gradually build, through the qualification, a good balance of competencies. But at the operational level, and I'll show you in a second the job role, but at the operational level, we're thinking about somebody who started working for an organisation in very basic finance. They think they can see a career developing. So 1 and 2 years into that career, what do we want them to be doing? Right? Think of yourself as an employer. We want to make sure that the main thing they do is just to understand how accounting fits into the business. Financial accounting, management accounting, and a few of the business management issues that come up in the enterprise. So nearly 2/3 of the effort spent at the operational level, at the beginner level, if you like, the 1 and 2 years into the role, is making sure you've developed those skills. But also understanding that there's no point just being able to say, this is how you calculate, for instance, cost variances. I can calculate them accurately, I can get statements to reconcile, brilliant. But fit it into the business and say, if I've identified a favourable cost variance in materials, that tells me that my materials are cheaper than I expected. That's a simple explanation, but we can link that and say, if they're cheaper, are they still doing the same job? So we look at labour efficiency, we look at the material usages, and we say, well, if those are poor, if they're adverse results, then maybe cheap means cheap, nasty cheap, not good cost cheap. Yeah? So there's problems elsewhere. So just a very simple, straightforward illustration, as we would understand it, yeah? Because we've developed further up this level. But for somebody who's just starting out, that might be a bit of an eye-opener. They've been taught to calculate variances, they've been taught formulae to calculate variances. You get through exams just now from doing that without understanding why you do it. You've learned a bunch of formulae. Now we're going to be saying the reason is we've got some information for our business management. And then, with that information, we need to communicate to someone. If we found that the procurement manager has been buying cheap substitute materials, we've got to say either to the procurement manager or maybe to someone senior who will then pass on the news. So we've got to make sure that we can take the information we've developed and go through the proper channels, communicating it appropriately and influencing decisions that are made by others. That's the people skills that are in there. Now, I've said, for the finance officer, you're 1 or 2 years into a role. We don't expect you to be sitting in the boardroom making big decisions and sort of takeovers and acquisitions and share issues and all the rest of it. We're not leading the business. So there's a very, very, very small slice that goes in just to appreciate that some of what we're doing all the way around here will go up to leadership level, and there could be big decisions that are made that develop the business. So just a general, very, very overview understanding of what the people at the top of the business want to see. So we don't actually work that much on leadership skill. So that's what the operational level defines. And what we've done within some of our documentation, I think this is in the syllabus document, you get your hands on one of these. I don't think we brought any with us. But we've got the have you got the big one? No, you've got the small one, haven't you? Do you know where these are, Jack? Are there some available? You've all got them, yeah. You don't have to. I'm not doing a class exercise, but in the professional qualification document towards the back, we've got these little descriptions, and it's just ever so brief in the back. There's the competency framework followed by these personas as we've described them. And there's one for each level. I'll put the management one up more briefly later on, but we said you're a finance officer. You're dealing with your manager and with other people at the same level as you, working on the products and services that you're delivering. The types of questions that you'll be asked aren't going to require huge detailed responses, and that will be reflected in our examining. And when we get on to looking at the overall integrated side of things, we need to know about the structure of the organisation, communication across the different functions. So why would the finance function be speaking to operational or procurement and so on? Mainly around costing and budgeting issues, and seeing what impact decisions have on financial statements. So we've thought in developing the qualification, we've thought about who the individual is. And we've got something which these slides will come to you. This is obviously not been through our marketing department, as you can tell. It's not pink enough to have been through marketing. But we've done a little bit more work around these personas so that you, with your students, are able just to understand the bigger picture and talk to them about what develops through the level. And particularly this looks at where the case study towards the end is headed towards. So the type of information that you're producing, management information, the type of people you're speaking to, your colleagues at the same level, in the finance department largely, but one or two areas outside. And then we've got a little bit more of a narrative on what that person's doing. Talking about implementing a strategy. So you don't develop a strategy, that would be a leadership role. Yeah? Somebody says, we need to do this, we need to develop, we need to have our profits growing at 20% per annum, or whatever it might be. So we're looking at ways to improve the profitability or the production volume, whatever it might be. Yeah? We tend to look on the short term at operational, at management it will be medium term, at strategic level it will be long term. So there's a clear distinction there. A lot of this, cost and cost accounting, winding, preparing budgets, advising on short term, this comes within the 2/3 of the technical skills, the core accounting and finance skills. Yeah? Understanding how the business is structured is something that's in the E pillar, E1. Talks about the communication that we have to have, the levels that we're communicating at, the type of stuff that's going to be communicated. And then as we get to the bottom here, we're looking at the F pillar, saying that, you know, why do we have financial reports? Well, we've got management information reports, we've got financial statements, and they're all about how we are performing. And we want to make a good impression to investors, to banks, to our suppliers, to our customers, to show that we're in good financial health so that business can continue. So that's why we need an understanding of financial reporting beyond the basic management accounting. All right? So each level has got that little story about your individual and what they'll be doing. All right? And if you can develop an understanding of that, then you're in a better position to communicate to the students as to what they're doing. And if you're teaching, for instance, the management accounting, P1, like I said a little bit earlier, you're not going to be teaching all the financial standards. But there's bits just saying, well look, if you do this, if it's decision making, if it's budgeting, cash flow forecasting, that sort of thing, then say this has an impact in financial accounting. So you can just be aware of those links without having to be an expert in all three pillars. Okay, now a little bit moving on to the actual assessment. This is just words around what that syllabus diagram was, but particularly about the assessments. Remember, we had 3 boxes and then the case study. And that's the order in which we would be doing them. The 3 subjects, E1, P1 and F1, they're going to be assessed using objective testing, which we'll have a look at. We'll see what sorts of questions come up in objective testing. And that will be on demand. So there isn't a timetable that we impose on students as to when they must do their exams or when they can do their exams. It's going to be a bit of work really between you and your students. Yeah? We can give advice. I can write stuff that goes on to cimaglobal.com. I can send emails out to students. But what this is to say to the student, when you are ready, take an exam. Rather than, on the 21st of May, you're taking this exam. Yeah? And think about it, when we've all been through exams, haven't we? And have we always, whenever we've done an exam, have we always felt 100% prepared? Has anyone, maybe the weekend before an exam, developed a bit of toothache? Or, you know, so had bad family news or some kind of illness or something like that? There's always distractions. Yeah? We've had things like travel disruption, things like that, that mean that it's difficult to get to the exam hall for one reason or another on that date at that time. Now, what we've got is that if you intend, first of all, if your initial plan is to take the exam on the 21st of May, but on the 15th of May you get really bad toothache and you can't study because you get headaches and you need to go to the dentist and it's painful and you take ages to recover, then your choice is, well, I won't take it on the 21st of May. I'll take it on the 30th of May. Yeah? An extra bit of chance to recover and study a little bit further. Alright? So that's a huge amount of flexibility for the student. And I talk about it as a positive, but there is also a risk with it. And I think you can probably guess what the risk is from what I've said, is that a student gets to the middle of May and thinks, I've not studied enough. So I'll move it from the 21st to the 30th. And then gets to the 25th of May and thinks, not studied enough. So moves it to the 14th of June and then thinks, there's a football on or there's tennis on or something like that. I'm going to watch that instead of studying. So it becomes the 30th of June, then the 14th of July, then the 30th of September, and then never. Yeah? So somehow or other, we've got to work with the students to say, look, there's an incentive here. If you get this out of the way, then you can move on, And remembering all the time is that I'm sure as the situation develops with this qualification, that employers will be looking, not just, currently sometimes you get asked, was it first time passes? Did you get through on first time passes? You might under this say, oh yes, I passed everything first time, but I took 3 years between each exam. So I'm now 57 years old and I've just passed. Yeah, everything first time though. So people will start to be asking, when did you start studying? When did you get through each level of the exams? So we need to keep the students on track. That's a bit of a challenge. In any order, there isn't really a definitive order in which students should study these. So again, you can think about it with the students, what sort of subject might get them engaged earliest. I'll give you one bit, just jumping ahead of it. In the case study that they do, the main focus at operational case study will be on management accounting. And it will branch out with questions that relate to E1 and F1. Right? Now, so you might think the first thing to teach them should be management accounting so that they can really understand it by the time they get to the case study. But somebody else will argue with me and say, surely they should do the most critical subject nearest to their case study. Right? So that they can remember much more about it. So there's two arguments in there that say, do P1 first? No, do P1 last. Right? There's another argument that says there's a story across the pillars that talks about understanding the business, making decisions, and then seeing what happens to the financial statements. So you should do them P and F. There's nothing so intricate or clever that says there is a recommended route. All right? A lot of it will depend, particularly for the course leaders, on the availability of the resources. Yeah? Your tutors being available and when do you want them to do that. But they'll do these subjects most likely one by one. I don't see any huge value in teaching E1 on a Monday, P1 on a Tuesday and F1 on a Wednesday and trying to study all three concurrently. All right? But once they've got the three complete, then everything will be wrapped up in this case study. Right? And we'll look at the case study a little bit later on as to what it is, but it's not asking the same questions over again. Up here, you might be doing calculations that would be done in preparing a set of financial statements. Down here, you won't. You definitely won't. We don't retest. This is all about application of the knowledge that you've demonstrated. It's about discussing. So what I said before about variances, can you calculate variances here? Can you interpret variances there? Yeah, somebody's calculated them for you. What do they now? What recommendations would you make? Okay, this is a fixed exam. There will be 4 opportunities in a year. So slightly more flexibility than what we have just now. There's 4 opportunities each year to take the exam. What we're calling about an examining window is within each of these months, week 2 of the month is the operational case study week. And whether it's, you would be able, the student would be able to take the exam on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday or Saturday. There's some choice in there. It's a computer-based exam. It will be available at the same test centres that the objective testing is available. Yeah? And yeah, there's a choice over the 5 days. Just to make it clear, there's not just one exam. So you won't have somebody who takes it on the Tuesday and comes out and tells all his or her friends what was in the exam. So everyone who takes it by Saturday is passing it, right? There'll be 5 different stories that make up the case studies, and it'll be a random opportunity to which one comes in. So I could come out on a Tuesday and tell you the story that I have in my case study. You've got a 20% chance of that case study coming up. And the second thing is, because it's not based upon knowledge, I'm not sure how much I'm helping you by telling you what's going on, because the test is quite clever in being able to determine whether you understand, whether you can write something that demonstrates that you understand the issues. Yeah? So it's not just me coming out and saying, look, the answer to the first one is you take 14, multiply it by 8, then you add that to 236, and then, yeah, and something like that. It's it's a test of how you analyse and communicate things. All right. So so that's all new. It's been a long time since CIMA has had an examining system that has boxed you into a level. When I started teaching CIMA, that was the case. You had these 4 levels. Each of them had 4 papers in them, and the student had to take all 4 papers together. And, well, that was just the rules. Again, thinking about it now with what we've done, we're thinking, what a ridiculous task to set someone that they have to do management, accounting, taxation, company law, and financial reporting all together. That was one of the levels. In what way can company law integrate with management accounting? Yeah? And the business tax that they had at the time was ridiculous as well. So anyway, this all makes sense. Yeah? Just to highlight the difference, I'm not putting all 3 of the donuts up, but when somebody's shown that they're competent, remember how that was so heavily, nearly 2/3 was core accounting skills. We're now saying when you're promoted and you're now a finance manager, yes, you still need to have an understanding of the doing of accountancy, but we want more of an understanding of implications in business. You're going to be communicating now with people who work for you, as well as peers, and as well as with management, with external stakeholders as well. So much more on that. And now, you do have a team to lead. There are people who are going to be doing tasks for you, so you've got to develop a greater amount of leadership skill. Okay? And this is, we had the story about the operational, that's operational down there. And then we've got another story about who you're communicating with. So CFO and senior business managers. You're doing more detailed analysis, so we're expecting longer responses from you. This is now where it comes to the case study. And the types of things that you've got. You've got more stakeholder information. You're making more of a decision. Rather than applying information into decision making, you are now making some of the decisions about the product's price or the product volume and so on. Okay? The story on financial reporting is still the same, but you tend to be looking at sort of bigger issues on financial reporting. Right? So these are hugely informative in terms of where the organisation is going and also where the syllabus is going. Now, one of the things that we've done in terms of changing the syllabus is that within the objective testing, we've introduced a new pass mark, and this has caused a little bit of concern, I think it's fair to say. Has anyone heard or seen what the pass mark is for the objective tests? Yeah? You want to say? 70%. Yeah, this is the one that people go, oh. If you're worried, you should see what the faces that students make when they hear this. And then what I've done, what we've got coming up here, is that I've got this exercise which in management accounting mathematical terms actually proves that 70% and 50% are the same thing. Yeah? You wait to see this. And as I've said, as I've been talking about this, I before becoming an accountant, my bachelor's degree was in mathematics. So I've got an honours degree with distinction, I'll have you know, I don't know how I got that, in mathematics. So when I say that to people, then they're more inclined to listen. And I said, but he just said that 50% and 70% are the same thing. How can that be? He's got a maths degree, he must be right. Now, as I say, it's management accounting maths. So just follow this through. Let's say I set a target. I've got a syllabus which is made up of learning outcomes, things that you need to be able to do. I I think it's a good idea that we present someone to a potential employer who's better than just 50%. All right? And the analogy, you may remember when we were talking about this back in February, that I think it was Noel said he had an airline pilot as his case study, and he said, if you're getting onto an airplane and you meet the pilot, and you say, oh, when did you become a pilot? And he said, oh, I just passed my exams last month. Brilliant. What did you get in your exams? Oh, I got 50%. Right? It's an old story. It's how confident are you then about staying on that aircraft? And then when the pilot says, I was really good in the first half of the syllabus, the one that was about taking off and getting into the air and pointing it roughly in the right direction, really good at that. But the second half, I could never understand stuff about landing. Oh, could never do that. Yeah. This was before Malaysia Airlines started doing that. But so we said, well, you know, we've got to show a little bit more. Same with the other one that he used was with a surgeon. You know, if you want a surgeon who's good at cutting you open and taking things out, but is not very good at putting them back in the right order and stitching you up. So we want to have a better number than 50 to show that somebody is going to do a good job when they turn up in the business. So that's fair enough. So that's what we set as a benchmark. There's no reason, there's no good argument to say that's no good. But under the current system, within our professional qualification and that of every other body that uses paper-based exams, the examiner does not have enough room in a 3-hour exam to test all the learning outcomes. A really good examiner with a lot of imagination and a lot of hard work could maybe test 3/4 of the learning outcomes. All right? And we've all been through exams, we've all worked hard on a topic, you know, and we've all had, you know, this, everyone does it, they think, right, what's going to come up? Yeah? So you think, right, give me a topic. Right, so yeah, I know, linear programming, that's not been in the last 3 exams, so the examiner's going to test it this time. So we spend the weekend understanding linear programming, and we get to the exam, and it's not there. Oh dear. Right, what a shame. Or it is there, and we think, brilliant. Okay, but you know, we can't guarantee on paper that something that we are really focusing on is going to come in. So an examiner tests, and I think that's being generous to 70%. I think in most subjects you would find that it tests about 60, 65%. So we'll say 70% because it works well with my numbers. Right? Now, we take these two. These are independent of each other. The student has studied and worked on topics that he or she has made himself comfortable with. The examiner, secretly has gone away and chosen some topics to put in the exam. So those are independent. So what score do you expect to get? This is the expect part. This is in management accounting maths. Your expected value